Welcome to the IAQG General Assembly. My name is Judy Lastly, and I'm going to walk you through just a few meeting notes and introduce the agenda as we go forward. And if there's any questions, you can let me know, flag me down, and we'll try to resolve any concerns or issues that you're having. So just a note that this event is being recorded. If there's something that you missed and maybe your personal note-taking or anything that you're hearing, it will be recorded and we will post that just as quickly as we receive it back online, so you will be able to re-review that information. Additionally, the presentations will all be uploaded to the IAQG participant portal upon conclusion of the meeting. We'll do that just as quickly as we can. Also, the meeting rules. All the meeting rules were provided during registration, as well as they're part of the meeting app and online. So those policies are in effect for this meeting. And if there is anyone that feels that there's an issue or a concern, I ask you to raise it to any of the leadership that you see sitting around the front table here, and we'll try to resolve whatever issues are raised. We do have virtual attendees that are making up part of our quorum today. 3 individuals that I'm aware of. We're validating to make sure that they're all connected and working through that. But in the room, we do have quorum. We have one person that was recently unable to make it, Brian Milne, and he's, to my knowledge, has given the proxy to Paul Hawthorne. So with that, we do have quorum and are able to proceed with the General Assembly. One thing I would like to note, though, is, and you've probably heard this 1,000 times, is please silence your phones, turn them off, lower the volume, and if you do have to take a phone call, please go outside where we aren't privy to the conversations that you're having and interrupting any of the proceedings. There has been just a slight adjustment to the agenda regarding some of the decisions we'll be discussing today. But the opening, we'll go through that. Andy will do his executive report, followed by the sectors and the treasurer, and the performance report just prior to the break. In that section, we do have the meeting minutes for review and acceptance from the May meeting. We have 2 leadership roles that we are asking for confirmation of and acceptance in leading those areas, as well as then the 2023 budget for the IAQG. Followed by that, after the break, we will be followed by the other committee reports, as well as the relationship teams as we go forward, closing comments, and you are also all invited for a lunch in the same room that we had the breakfast in. Let's discuss the decision process. So the May meeting minutes were provided to the full voting members on the 28th of September, so those should be in hand and gave opportunity to review those. The full voting members will also be provided with the budget that Alex Valdery will take us through here during the meeting, and those will also be added to the information for you to review prior to voting. Please note that there is a rule that we follow to carry out the decision process, and it's noted there that we can take it during electronic processes. The electronic vote will remain open for approximately 10 days, striving to get all voting members to log in and render their vote as we go forward. And then the results of the decisions are summarized, and we provide those back to the voting members, as well as to anyone that is open or able to log into the participant portal. If you have any issues logging into the participant portal, please let us know, and we'll make sure that all of the information is available to you. So at this point, one of the first decisions that we will be covering for the information that was previously provided to you are the meeting minutes that were taken during May 2022 meeting that was held in Brussels, our first meeting back, if you remember. From a physical perspective, that was held also as a hybrid meeting with virtual individuals logging in. So you will be receiving that electronically to go through, and I encourage you to read through it, make sure that those are accurate, and render your vote for that decision. And with that, I'm going to invite Andy Mayer to come to the stage and lead us through the executive report.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the General Assembly held here in Texas. We've got a packed agenda for you, as Judy's just mentioned, so we're going to go straight into the meeting and the discussion items. I hope you all enjoyed last night. I hope you're feeling ready to participate in this meeting, and we'd welcome your questions as we go through. So, firstly, we've got 3 performance excellence marketplace providers who have contributed to the IAQG. They're available for you to go and visit outside. The first of those is Intact. Intact we're working with to develop the next version of Oasis. So please, if you do want to speak to them, you can go and speak to those. Secondly, we have BSI, a long-term supporter of the IAQG, and again, they're available outside with a stand. You can go and engage BSI and they can talk about their business to you. And finally, we welcome back Verify, who have previously supported us, and also they offer services. You're welcome to go and support or go and inquire about those services and bring them into any discussions that you're having. So thank you to all 3 of the PEMs for supporting the IAQG and offering their products to our members. So I'm going to start with a couple of quotes. So if you think about, we've got a number of changes currently going on within the IAQG, and these are a couple of quotes from Albert Einstein, so long-standing. But the first one, everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler. We're doing a lot of work at the moment to try and simplify. So things like the single SDO, things like the amendment to the articles and the rules, we're trying to make that simple so that when we do get new members that join, it's easy for those to come into the organisation and understand how it operates, as an example. And when we think about that, when we think about change, the world as we've created it through our lens, it is a process of our thinking, and it can't be changed unless we change our thinking. So as we go through the presentation throughout the course of the day, I'd encourage you just to reflect on those thoughts. What's going on currently in the wider market? So you'll see on the slide on screen there are significant disruptions, and those disruptions are increasing in both frequency and magnitude. I don't plan to read through the slide, but you can see from the slide that there's unrest, there's economic challenges, there's environmental challenges. If you look at the bottom right, though, we've also got challenges in terms of competition. So as we've been through the COVID period, there's different ways of working, there's new entrants coming into the market. We've got new technologies. We've had a project within the IAQG that's been focusing on digital for a period of time, and the reason we're focusing on digital is in order to make sure that we're fit for the future. And going back to that position that I just discussed around Albert Einstein, we're trying to make things simple for the individuals to operate within. And finally, internal change. There's lots of internal change going on, outside in the markets and the environments, but also inside within the IAQG. So what does that mean? So this analysis and the statistics come from Gartner, but it's saying to us that an overwhelming majority of the workforce, some 83%, feel like they're being overburdened, and they coined the phrase cognitive overload. So there's an awful lot of change going on. There's new things to take into account, and what we're seeing is we're seeing an increase in retirement from the industry, so people are leaving the industry. We're also seeing, and they're leaving the industry to not come into it, not go anywhere else and work for anybody else, but they're just exiting completely. We're seeing resignations where people are still continuing to work, but are going into different markets, so going outside the aerospace, space and defence arena. And we're seeing an increase in terms of home working. And the difficulty with some of that home working, whilst it has benefits, is that we lose some of the connectivity. And we know that for the fact that we haven't been meeting in this size for the last couple of years of COVID. So we know that it's important that we bring people and communities together in order to progress and make those decisions. If I look at the survey data that goes to the CEOs of all the nations, in terms of in the UK, the FTSE 100, in terms of America, the S&P, survey data goes out for the CEOs to provide their thoughts. So if you look at the top graph, this is a question. There's only a couple hundred, well, less than that in the top one, 100 plus responses. The bottom one, there's a couple of hundred responses. But it is stating that quality is still within the top three. If I'd have run this data last year, quality would have been number 2. Environment has just increased a little bit. So the considerations around environmental are now paramount when organisations are thinking about launching new products. If you look at the second graph, the output quality is still a key concern in terms of this working arrangement and the environment. So the data from CEOs is saying that quality is still important and high level and within their radar and their sphere of how they want to work and operate, which is good news for us. That's good news that we're still recognised. But the process is changing. So again, back to that opening comment around we need to change our thinking. In a traditional sense, change was seen as difficult, and therefore it's easier to continue to operate the way we continue to operate. If you look at how that pendulum's swinging now, actually not changing is a bigger risk. And I've talked about the potential of people leaving the industry, i.e. moving to other industries that are changing. In order to manage that change, it's really around the conflict. So how do we address the conflict of people with a mindset that says, actually, it's better to continue to do what I've always done? Throughout this week, we've had a lot of questions, some really good interactions, and we're trying to seek to understand, to be able to provide more information and therefore work through any conflict that's occurring. And then in terms of providing that more support, we obviously want to reduce the complexity. We have worked to identify those potential barriers. Some of the things we think we've addressed, we're re-communicating. So we believe there's probably more frequent, more detailed and more frequent communications. And we've got to pinpoint where that resistance is and make that additional effort to ensure that people understand the change and are comfortable with the changes that we're proposing. There's some stats on the bottom in terms of what the supply chain think are the important things. You can see there, the change to the processes and the change to the technology makes up 2/3, just over 2/3 of what their concerns are in the supply chain. So the internal changes that we're making, some of those will have a knock-on effect to the supply chain. We recognise we've got to be able to communicate those reasons and why we're changing also, all the way through that supply chain so that people can transition quickly. In terms of, a significant change for us for the single SDO, so the Single Standards Development Organisation, we've had 2 new councils meet this week. Actually, the Standards Council met after the IAQG 1 Standards Committee, but I thought we had a really, really good exchange of information, explanation of the purpose and the process, including the relationship with the -1 committee. I also thought, the demonstration and bringing people on board with the new technology, Standard Works. So the writing teams have been requesting, and the requirements team have been requesting us to change, rather than doing things by email all the time, to change into a tool set. This tool set has workflow embedded within it. So again, it assists that simplification. It provides more visibility for the voting members to see how each other voting member has read the standard, interpreted it, and provided comments. The second committee was the Standards Committee. We got a very high number of attendees on Monday morning for this committee. So, over 80 attendees in the first meeting, which is a really good sign of the interest and people wanting to understand that change. We've also answered a significant number of questions. Not all of them were actually related to the Standards Committee. Some of them were related to how we operate in other areas of the IAQG, but it's worthwhile, again, building that knowledge, explaining to individuals, and we're starting to move on that journey in terms of progression. Those committees will continue to meet. We've promised that we'll provide written feedback to the questions submitted. We've promised that we'll provide a couple of documents to bridge the SAE working document and bridge that with the IAQG. So the OMS met this week, first time for a couple of years. That action's firmly placed. And until we get those in place, we won't put a standard through this process. And we've identified the 9137 to go through the process first, but we'll only do that once we've completed the 2 previous actions. So in terms of OASIS version 3, again, there's been some really good interaction during the course of this week with providing feedback. So Intact, Greg from the IAQG side, and the interested parties met yesterday and worked through a significant list, you know, some 160 queries, questions. Lots of progress has been made. The day before, Greg came into the EC and we worked through what we had at that time as 17 showstoppers. Greg went back to the team, explained the decisions. There's a couple more things that have come back and said, actually, we need to do development work on. So we're working to plan that development work, and then we'll look to communicate to you about its launch. But I've got to stress that the data and the ability to make sure that we get clean data in the system is really, really important. And we're not going to compromise and push the launch through until we're comfortable that we're going to run that data migration again. It'll take 2 or 3 weeks to do that final data migration, and then there'll be a bit of time to verify it. So in your own mind, you know, in terms of timeline, we're going to have to work through that final data migration. We're going to have to work through those development items. We've got to get that time embedded from Intact as our partner on it, and then we'll give you the 30-day notice. If you were working that through in your mind, it's going to be in December when we give you that 30-day notice, as long as there's, you know, nothing significant that comes up in the final development process. It's a key asset to us. It's very, very important, and the data quality and the data stewardship going forward is really significant and important to us. So in terms of comply, this was some interesting stats. As we've been through the COVID period, and as processes are, you know, maybe difficult for some people or they've had to adapt, when the team went out from Gartner and surveyed, almost 20% said they don't comply with the process. Some of the things we're seeing in the OASIS development is are people complying to the current process? So we've identified one of the things, a concern with the number of logins, for example, that we need to segregate, the number of access people have that we need to segregate, and we need to make sure that we get that compliance. But quite stark to see that people openly admit that they're not following the process. So on screen you'll see 3 pictures. These are examples of how other industries, so the first one's from pharmaceutical, the second one is from food, and then the third one from technology. These industries are working to make things simple for people. So if you see the packet of tablets in days gone by, if an individual had to take tablets, different types of tablets, they'd buy a container, they'd dispense them themselves. The pharma companies are now doing that at source. So the pharmacies took over, and now the actual pharmaceuticals are making it easier for people to follow the process. In terms of the middle picture in the food industry, This is about providing too much choice. So they ran tests with, an option for 3 different styles of food. They ran tests with 20 different varieties. And people think providing those options is brilliant and therefore you'd get more sales, but it's actually inverse. Those options where we only provided a smaller number had some 30 to 40% increase in sales. And if you look at the last picture with the mobile phone, and if you think back to when you got a mobile phone 15 or 20 years ago, you used to get a really big box. In that box was a really big manual. Nowadays, you get a piece of paper that says this is how you charge it and this is how you switch it on. Some of that ability to understand the technology is contained on the phone when you switch it on. So you work through the menu, it steps you through how to transfer contacts, etc. from cloud storage. So if you look at those industries, they are pushing forward to develop different tactics to help it be easier and reduce some of the burden. You look at some of our industry standards below, in the first example, we still bolt on. In a lot of cases, as opposed to it being part of the original design process, actually we say, after we've designed it, we'll do a DFMEA. We need to get that into the process so it's in the sequence as opposed to a bolt-on activity. If you look at the second one, we provide an awful lot of choice. Like the food example, if you provide a lot of choice, people struggle to make the decision. We've got to funnel that decision-making process and make sure people can get to the right tool set to use. So one of the really important things the EC discussed this week was an ability for the PSCI team to go and look at that training, and that training will assist people to determine which tool sets to use and provide the benefit and the value. And finally, when people start a job or move into the industry, going back to the comments that I made earlier, that we're seeing a lot of retirees or people exiting, it's often the case that we have very heavy policy process that people need to read through. We give them a stack of documents and information. We need to make that simpler. The generation Z, as I'm in the States, they want that snippet of information. They don't want to read hundreds of pages of process, procedure, policy. So we've got to, again, filter down, bring out the important points and make sure people can get to the relevant information. In terms of the governance and some of the transition that's going on, we held meetings back in 2019 to discuss this. After we'd held the original meetings, we then provided the information to the strategy working group. From the strategy working group, we got a legal input. Sorry, before we got to the strategy working group, we got a legal input. And again, we provided what the legal advice was to the EC and strategy working group. We then went forward with sector meetings that briefed out some of the proposals, and there were workshop activities in those sector meetings in 2019. We've continued to iterate with the Belgian notary, so this is the legal requirements for our articles, and refine through this year, through last year and into this year. We've got a good proposal. A number of comments have come in, so there's one from the Asia Pacific that we'll respond to. There's a dozen or so from Europe. In the OPC meeting yesterday, we invited comments from the Americas sector. So I'd encourage you to, if you have got comments on the articles, to bring them back in the next week, so the end of next week. We'll respond to all those, and then we'll put the new articles out for a formal ballot. But just to provide you a bit of information in terms of, that's just the articles and the rules, I'm going to go through very quickly what we're trying to do in terms of the organisation. So we're trying to make it simple for people to understand. We're incorporating the requirements of the legal changes. So there's some in terms of the Belgian legislation, in particular, as meetings have been held hybrid or electronically previously, there's some elements that we need to put into the rules around hybrid meeting, digital votes, etc. The legal encourage us to do, well, it's more than encourage, to conduct digital votes because it provides a great body of evidence that we've got for history as a record. So as we go forward, we have to go through the final review of those. We're going to bring up the policies, so things like export control, into the high-level set, and I'll go through a diagram in a minute that explains that. And then we're going to make sure where we've got policies currently quoted today that are actually a mix of procedure and policy, we're going to make sure those are at the correct level, and therefore they go forward as procedures. So what that looks like, we've got how the organisation operates. So we take the industry needs, we produce products, we do oversight of the scheme, and then we've got a performance, and recently we've just talked about training. We know there's some gaps. So on there's some areas where we currently have procedural or policy gaps. So we've got to look at that when we go through the review. We've got a great baseline of data that we can convert, and that's a lot of the heavy work that we can convert as we go forward. So this isn't starting from scratch. This is just about transitioning to a simpler model. But you can see there we've got policies at the high level, we've got policies and procedures across the middle, and we've got a number of, again, policies and procedures in those supporting areas. So going forward, and the OMS team are working this action, going forward, we've identified that the top level articles of association and the rules, and maybe possibly some procedures that govern the IAQG will be at the 100 series. Then the next bit around how do we actually produce our products and services will be the 200 series, and then the supporting functions will be the 300 series. So I know it's been a very brief introduction. We've discussed it in a number of meetings this week as we've gone through, and the OMS team are starting now to work the transition plan and put a timeline together as to when and how we will transition to that format. So with that, as I said before, we did hold the OMS meeting. We've got our first decision, and that is that we confirm and accept Ed Bain as the IAQG OMS leader with a term of 2 years through to October 2024. So that voting decision will go out. We can confirm today we've got quorum in terms of 18 around the table, so if people agree, you can nod your heads, but actually the electronic vote will go out and that will be reported back to the members. So do people agree with Ed being the OMS leader for a further 2 years? Okay, so we'll get the formal vote, but it looks like we've got consensus around the table, and we'll report those results back when the vote comes in. The next decision then, similar in terms of term, is around Alex. So Alex has done an exceptional job in difficult times over the COVID period to try and protect our money. You know, inflation is having an effect now in recent months, and I'm sure he'll go through in a bit more detail in his presentation, but we took the option to invest some of our money. We're getting a very good return compared to what we were getting previously. He's also been converting the finance system to a more digital system. So the introduction of QuickBooks, the introduction of Bill.com, the introduction of Divvy, which are all linked together, allow us to process that financial information a lot slicker than we did previously, allow us to report it clearer than we did previously. And as we go forward with Intact for the version 3, we're going to have an application process interface, an API, that takes that data from the Oasis system, gives it to the finance system, and therefore we get back-to-back reporting and don't need a lot of swivel chair activity. So the decision or the vote that I'll ask for is, can we confirm and accept Alex Valdery as the IAQG Treasurer with a term of 2 years through to October 2024? So again, I'm just looking for a sort of a feedback from the voting members as whether people are going to agree with that, and we'll put the formal vote out and provide that feedback. Yeah. Okay, thank you. With that, thank you very much. I'll hand over to the sector leader from Americas, Eric, to go through his presentation.
Just one item that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned is that there are 2 microphones on either side of the room, as well as the voting members. There's a microphone at your table. So if there are any questions that you'd like to raise, then either make your way to the microphones on either end, or if I could ask the voting members to pass the mic, if you will, if you want to make any comments as we're progressing along. Okay, Eric.
Good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure to welcome you all here to Texas, my home state. I'm going to give you a brief overview of our sector activities since we last met when we were in Brussels. So meeting-wise, we just had our last face-to-face meeting, which was also here in Dallas, September 12 through 14. The last 2 days of that, we actually had an auditor workshop, quite successful. We had about 150 participants come in. And we ran 4 different tracks in workshops and had a series of topics being covered. And those have been quite successful. We continue to get good attendance. And, you know, these are critical because they're designed to, they give us the opportunity to raise issues within our auditor community that we think are important, that we want to drive a specific auditor behavior. But we also have requirements for authenticated auditors to maintain a certain number of continuing professional development credits. And so today's requirement is 15 hours over a 3-year period. As we transition into the new -3, it's going to move up to 40 hours. So these become even more important. But essentially, we give about 12 to 14 hours of credit on average when we run these events. As for our planned meetings coming up, we'll have a virtual meeting with the Americas Certification Oversight Team in January. That will be virtual only. Our next full meeting is 14 through 16 March in Melbourne, Florida. And we've aligned that one with the CQSDI meeting at our members' request to allow for those that want to participate in both. It's not the perfect solution, but it allows people to move from one event to the other that want to have some level of engagement with both entities. And then we're also looking at another auditor workshop in July. So I consolidated this slide based on what you may have seen in the, previously, but we currently have 19 organizations with voting rights within the Americas sector. 10 of those are also IAQG voting members, and those are distinguished by the yellow highlight here on the slide. So a few changes since you last saw this. We've had Maricela Reyes as the new IAQG voting member for Boeing. We've got Jeff Ewing as a new IAQG voting member for Northrop Grumman, and of course Karen Johnson, who is new for the AAQG voting member. And we've not had any new inquiries since we last for new folks to join. A lot of changes in our leadership team within the Americas sector. So obviously my name's there. This is my first time presenting you as the lead of the sector. Susie, who was our previous chair, is staying quite engaged and really been a great help to us in supporting our activities. She's also our membership chair right now, and we've had Maitland Herrera Batista from Lockheed Martin join as our communications leader, and then Mark Rodriguez, who's here as our industry relationships leader. When we think about key activities that are going on within our sector at the moment, these are the 3 top things that came to mind for me. So I think you all know about AS 9018, and we've got this customer feedback process being heavily utilized by DCMA. And right now, well, this is as of about 3 weeks ago, we've had 14 of our 42, I believe, CBs within our sector have clients that are now utilizing this process. There have been about 125 entries where both parties agreed to use 9018, where they're walking through that. Now, With that has come some challenges. So, you know, we're continuing to work with both industry members and with DCMA on making sure that there's a common understanding of the requirements, making sure that this gets effectively deployed so that it's being handled the same way by each CB and on the DCMA side as well. So we've had some training events, and we're discussing future training events to help stabilize that process. There's also a new initiative. I'm calling it the data sharing kind of OASIS Tier 2 initiative. I may need to adjust that a bit, but basically, for those member companies that have dual oversight with the FAA and DCMA, this is about engaging with both parties on top of allowing access to Tier 2 data. It's about providing additional data about your quality management system. That can be internal audit information, that can be product conformance information, but as that gets shared, it can be jointly reviewed, reviewed by both entities, by DCMA and the FAA. And the idea is, if they utilize that information that we're sharing in advance, we may have the opportunity to have a reduction in overall oversight. So the mechanics of how that piece works is still being worked out, but it is something that's being pursued, and there's a few companies now that are entering a pilot project to see how this is going to work. And then the third thing, this is new, but GuideUp is Government and Industry Data Exchange Program. And it's a cooperative effort, I'm sure most of you know, between industry and the government on sharing all types of technical data. We're just kicking off an initiative and asking for member companies to participate in seeing how this is going to work. But essentially, DCMA is looking at developing a process in the future of how they expect the GuideUp process to work. And we have the opportunity through this participation to potentially influence that process and develop it alongside with them. So those are the three major things right now since we last spoke. We are reviving our early career process. As y'all know, we really had this running starting in 2018 and 19, and of course COVID kind of derailed us since we weren't able to continue meeting face-to-face. But essentially this takes in early career folks, allows us to give them an introduction to the IAQG, have member companies in IAQG, and have member companies develop projects for them to work on and help us develop the next future leaders and participants in our process. So we had Jennifer Gray of Spirit Aerosystems volunteer to lead this effort recently. So we have now have requests out to member companies to nominate individuals and start thinking about projects. So we always keep you informed of when we have leadership changes. I just thought I'd comment on the fact that we're looking also kind of at some of the structure that's there. So Mark, who recently joined us as the industry relationships rep, is helping us take a look at what that role should be. And historically, we have used that role as a coordinator amongst those other team members. So coordinating with civil authorities, the MRO, the Space and Defense, and helping make sure that everybody is aligned in our activities. So Mark is going to continue that, but also looking at ways to better utilize that position. So more to come on that. And then, of course, our continued focus in 2023 is what I suspect you'll hear in the other sector stream leaders' presentations, right? We're all working SDO. We're all working and supporting the OASIS V3. We've got the OCAP tool coming. There's just lots of changes. So that's our focus area for, the rest of the year and next year. And I think that's it. All right. Thank you all very much.
Hi everybody, my name is Fortunato Nino Giardina, work for Leonardo. I introduce myself because this is the first time I give a report into this assembly. And about the European, here it is, about the European sector. First of all, let's have a look to the membership, the status of the membership. Of course, we have 10 full members, and you see that it's mentioned that one is suspended, more about that later, 13 associate members, and 21 affiliate members. This is something that is worth being highlighted. We will see then. The European sector is particularly successful about enrolling the affiliate. Within the affiliate members, we have 3 new membership that are Saga Istanbul, that is for Turkey, it's a Turkish trade association. Atla from Italy, repair and services for gas turbine blades. And ASD CERT from Belgium, that is connected with ASD Trade Association and FOMA SDO for Europe. So this is an important link that we are developing to have a consistent evolution through the single SDO model. In terms of representatives, we had 2 changes, of course. One is Oliver Kratz, Airbus, that replaced Jo Werner, former sector leader, and I'm substituting him. And John Wanless from Rolls-Royce that replaced Mark Eaton-Watts, fundamental resource in the European sector. And so welcome to John and Oliver. This is the picture of our logos in terms of full and associate members. You can see that, unfortunately, I have to say, there is something in blue. Blue means suspended, frozen, unfortunately, and it affects the Russian members, both as associate Russian helicopters and even executive committee member USC from Russia. This is something that has to be in place and will remain until the measures that, against Russia are in place. The red ones are the members, the full voting members of the executive committee. And then we can start to have a look to our affiliate. As you know, some of them, you see the first, are controlled companies or subsidiaries of big groups that have already a membership as voting members, and therefore applying the principle of one vote for each member, they are affiliate. And this regards, of course, Airbus, Fokker, Radio Aereo, and even Telespazio. Then you can see there are many trade associations. We succeeded in having all the European, substantially all the European associations joining as affiliate members. This, for the European sector, is important because we are in the position to better listen the voice of small, medium enterprises. And this is important in our view to better understand our supply chain. And you see there are also, you see Atla here in this slide, and in the next one there are others. There are other entities that are industrial, small, medium enterprises, or anyway not big enough to apply to become associate. Anyway, the movement between associate and affiliate is something that is free, so it happens and can happen in the future. It depends on the availability to fulfill the commitments requirements of the members. So Again, let me mention about the leadership changes. Not only myself, I replaced Jörg Werner, as I said before, but also let me thank Robert Hamann, that accepted to be the vice leader of the sector. So thank you, Robert. And let's say something about the meetings. We had an executive committee meeting for Europe in Brussels in June. Almost full presence. 11 were here and just one remotely connected. The general meeting in September in Ulm, Germany. Again, thank you, Robert, for having hosted it. 34 people in presence and 60 connected remotely. This is a model that we, of course, want to change. This meeting is demonstrating that we are in the position to have a full attendance face-to-face substantially. And therefore, in the future, is my intention to restore the commitment requirement for the European members to attend with at least one representative the European meetings, to foster, of course, the networking. These very quickly are the names of the members of the executive committee in Europe, and the companies, the one that you saw in red before, with also the Russian representative suspended. This photo is from Ulm. It was very, very nice event and very good networking after such so long time. Let's go to the key activities. We can't deny that for the European sector, the single SDO is the kind of change Andy was mentioning before. And recently, the sector has been focused on making this change happen effectively with the proper level of awareness, alignment, and contribution from the sector. Of course, this is not perceived this way in the American sector, but in Europe it means changing the relationship we had with ASD and understanding a new way to work, or a new way to do the work we did before, because essentially nothing is changing in terms of processes, but with a different way of being involved in the SAE entity. We reactivated the early career project as well as the American sector, and I am very happy of the kickoff we held in Ulm. I'm personally following this team. It's increasing the number of European companies that are sponsoring this initiative. So today we have already more members than when we started. The team created their own channel, started working. They are connected today, and so I welcome them to the General Assembly. Let's see what we are going to focus next year. First of all, again, the SDO. We want the new process to be effective in the European network. It means ensuring all the contact and the contribution we had before from the entities that are not members in Europe. We need to work on the members' commitment. I already said that, because we have to restore the idea of a face-to-face and the networking as a value after the COVID. But return to face-to-face as an engagement has not to be considered exclusive with the idea of fostering communication and collaboration, and even the use of systemic hybrid meetings. Having hybrid meetings allow more people to be involved. So we will ask the members to attend, but we will allow much more people to be involved. So we want to reach a substantial attendance that is more than what we had before the COVID period. We learned that we can do it, and we know the rules to do it effectively. We have to work, we're going to work on the substitution plan because it's something that showed to be very, very important. You have noticed how we changed in the leadership, and we need to ensure that these changes are consistent and there is new blood in the association to sustain our activities. Thank you for your attention, and I leave the floor to Suguru.
So, good morning, everybody. My name is Suguru Watanabe. I'm working Mitsubishi Heavy Industry, MHI, in Japan. So I'm also first time doing a presentation in General Assembly. A little bit so, okay. So, first, I explain overview of IAQG sector. IAQG members are currently composed 34 companies in total. It means 31 IAQG members, 3 IAQG members, and secretaries. And China, India, Korea, Japan, and Singapore, these 5 countries organize a National Aerospace Quality Group. Next is the IAQG sector meeting summary. Last month, on September 14th, the IAQG sector meeting was held online. We had over 50 attendees from 8 countries. I would like to provide an overview of the main topics we covered at the IAQG meeting in September. For the operation of IAQG, 2022 fiscal year's budget execution forecast and 2023 budget plan were approved by all IAQG members, and IAQG charter and procedure are revised as required. About single SDO, we introduced single SDO concept and share the progress at that time with support by SAE member for detailed presentation and session for question and answer. Member understood the concept and publication steps. Under ICOP scheme, the representative of IAQG shares information about the result of standards, revision, and transition plan and the latest OASIS B3 development. Transition status of entity controlled by IAQG COT was also shared as a result of IAQG COT activities. And the IAQG sector is composed by Aerospace Quality Group of China, Korea, India, Singapore, and Japan. Each group reports their activities, their current topics, the overall status of their activity, their organization chart, and so on. They are supporting their stakeholder well by holding some sessions in local language. In sessions, each aerospace quality introduced IAQG standard and recommended the utilization of IAQG product with a transition material in local language. And also, update IAQG information is communicated as well as previous meetings. And we agree the next IAQG meeting would be face-to-face meeting in Singapore on March 8 to 10, 2023. And these are IAQG voting members. We have 7 companies from IAQG from participating in IAQG activities. And let me introduce new voting members. Mr. Haboku from ABIC today is online, and Mr. Gu Park from KAI in person. This chart shows IAQG organization representative chart. We have representative for each stream of IAQG. Key activities, we recognize our key activities and project prioritization in our sector. First is a single SDO. We need to support and engage the single SDO development and transition. And in Japan, the development of ICOP scheme for 9120 certification in progress. And in India, the establishment of their national 9100 certification scheme has started their planning. IAQG will support their activities. IAQG way forward to next year, 2023, as for transition to post-COVID situation. We hope we hold next IAQG meeting in person. And return to meet with members and push our activities and engagement, and aggressive participation in IAQG activities. All member companies are encouraged continuously achieve 100 of their contribution in the transition phase. Thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Good morning once again, everyone. I'm Alex Valderay, and I too am a local here, like Eric, although I'm a transplant. I came from, well, from all over, but I was originally from the state of New York, a small city called Binghamton, which actually was the birthplace of the Link flight simulator. So my dad used to work there, but I've been here for 6 years now. It's my adoptive state, but I still root for the New York Giants. I keep that to myself. You're a Giants fan? All right. I love it. All right. I'm sorry? Yeah, not bad. All right. Okay, so let's go on with the report from the Treasury. I'm not going to read through that slide. You can do that yourself. I'll talk through it a bit. So far, through the end of the third quarter, our sales, which are the standards, new certifications, recertifications, are on par with projections, actually slightly above. If I was to slice and dice the data, which I've done, our bread and butter is really the 9100 standard, so food for thought for the various committees here. We're feeling the effects of inflation. I think we'll, and I have some data on another slide, we'll probably exceed our budget by a little bit. That's due to a couple of different reasons. Travel costs are up now that we're traveling. Some of you might have experienced that for yourselves coming here. Also, meeting costs have gone up, and really I think one of the primary drivers for a cost overrun is the continuing development of OASIS version 3. While we go through those development considerations, in the background we've got to keep OASIS Next Gen operational, and that incurs some fees that, quite frankly, we just didn't anticipate for this year. But to get into some of the actual, first we'll go over some cash flow. As probably some of you in this room have often heard me say, we are a cash business. So I tend to present cash flow. It's critical to us. It helps us meet, of course, all of our obligations to our contractors and support endeavors like version 3. Our cash flow through the end of the third quarter was positive. It was approaching about $750,000. And I, outside of this month, I consider our overall cash flow for the year will be positive. It'll probably about meet our projections, more or less. Andy mentioned some investment activity, which is kind of in the middle. We have pursued, in light of increased inflation, we have pursued a capital preservation fund administered by Citizens Bank. I'm not going to get into the details, but it's a bond fund. It's highly liquid, and it helps provide basically a shield for some of the IAQG's funds. It shields us a bit from inflation, given enough time. It's a longer-term play, but should we require the funds, they are available to us within, I'd say, about a business week if we really needed it. But I don't anticipate it currently, nor in the next couple of years, based on what I understand to be some strategic initiatives coming forward and the current health of the organization's finances. So as an overview for where we are, as I indicated, I'm projecting, well, you've got the middle column there, the 2022 year-to-date is exactly that. Our year-to-date targets for those individual line items, or what we've attained for those line items. Pretty much on track. You can see my projections on the right. And as I've indicated, if you focus on the expense line item, I am projecting that will be a little bit over, but we will, I'm confident, still maintain a positive cash flow, albeit a little bit less than we have enjoyed in some prior years due to COVID. So although not meeting has probably encumbered some of the mission of the IAQG, a lack of exchange of information, face-to-face meetings, you get a lot done. From the finance side, it's helped us a great deal. So we have enjoyed in fiscal years 2020 and 2021 some significant positive cash flow. This year, not so much, but again, the key message is the cash flow is positive, and we're in a good financial state once again this year. And by the way, if there are any questions, let me know. The microphones are on each end of the room. Happy to entertain. A little bit of data on the individual business units. Kind of truncated this list. Traditionally, we showed things like defense, MRO, et cetera. We haven't had spend in those areas, so I've truncated it. You can see for yourself where we are at the end of the quarter 3. Once again, meetings a little bit over budget so far this year. again, inflation. It just, it costs more than what we anticipated to have some face-to-face meetings. The digital spend, 6071, will probably go over based on scope creep and some continuing development issues. Oasis Next Gen is an overspend. Again, in the budget cycle process this time last year, we anticipated getting version 3 off the ground approximately the first quarter of this year. Obviously, it didn't happen. There were some challenges that I think mutually we weren't aware of. So that's the overspend in that particular category, just to keep Oasis Next Gen going until we are all comfortable launching version 3. Okay, so what we're here for today is to go over the proposed budget. So I received input from sectors, from other business units. That's been incorporated in the green highlighted column. I have also looked at history, looked at some trends, and produced these numbers. So let me begin by drawing your attention a little bit to the 6055, the CERT oversight. That is a combination of what traditionally has been OPMT travel and just OPMT, so we've combined it. It's a large amount, a little over $600,000. In, let's see, I have a note here. In fiscal year 2019, those two business units combined were, we were at almost $500,000. So that additional money that you see in there, again, is inflation, and secondly is also to support some of the activity that Suguru just mentioned in India to encourage the standard promulgation there, okay? So we have some provisions set there. Also some provisions for, as we launch Oasis version 3, for any other enhancements next year. There's some monies in there, but a significant reduction actually in the digital spend. When compared to this year, we have a budget of a little over $1 million. We'll probably exceed that, and that spend will go down by 50%, if not more, as the year pans out. We'll see. So the total for our 2023 budget request is about $3.2 million. This year, 2022, that amount was about $2.8 million, okay? So roughly the same amount, a little bit of an increase, again, due to the anticipated digital enhancements, and then a little bit in OPMT, plus a little bit more allocated for meetings. All right, so that's the bulk of the increase between last year's approved expense and this year's proposed budget. So to kind of put it all together, I see, and I've developed a forecasting tool over the years that I think is pretty accurate, about 70, 80% accurate, not too bad. Basically, I see revenues as flat and expenses slowly increasing over the foreseeable future. Once again, that word, inflation. I just baked in a 10% across the board increase over the expense numbers as I projected out in 2024 and beyond. So although in the next year, the year after, we'll have some good positive cash flow on par with pre-COVID years, in other words, years where we do a lot of travel, we have face-to-face meetings and whatnot, you see, at least projection-wise, I feel that outlying years, 2025, 2026, will have a little bit of reduced cash flow. We'll keep an eye on that. If need be, in support of either maintaining a healthy bank account or supporting future strategic initiatives. There are levers that we can push and pull to recognize some more revenue. But right now, status quo as far as certification charges, as far as any other fees that we may have in the past charged for like meeting attendance, so on. Status quo, no meeting fee adjustments, no cert fee adjustments. I think we're doing just fine. As a bottom line number, we have approximately $10 million available in cash. Okay, some of that again is set aside in our capital preservation fund, but the bulk of that money is in a bank account, and at least some of that is available for future strategic initiatives. Any questions on the budget, on what I'm seeing? And let me draw your attention real quick before I finish that. The line item for interest. So that interest line item is a result of the bond fund. So you may recall about last year this time when I presented, we earned $200 or $300 in interest. It's a very low interest rate environment. Might have hopped up a little bit because of the Fed and a couple other things going on, but certainly not approaching over $100,000. And I expect that to increase as time goes on. So, and that right now is being rolled back into the bond fund. So it's like a snowball effect. So anyhow, any questions on what I've presented? Because I'm going to ask for a vote to approve the 2023 budget. So I'm focusing on the voting members here. Any questions, comments, concerns that I can address? All right, with that, decision time for the voting members. So the decision in front of you is to approve the proposed IAQG fiscal year 2023 budget as I just presented. A vote in favor means that you all feel that it meets our strategic initiatives and goals for the forthcoming fiscal year. If not, that means yours truly has to go back and sharpen his pencil and redo things. So can I get maybe a hands up or something from everybody, just so we can count? Everybody good? Okay. Teresa, okay, so I think that's, unanimous. All right, with that, I will close, and thank you all for your vote of confidence in me earlier. Pleasure to be here, and it's my pleasure to continue to serve for another couple of years. Thank you very much.
Okay, yep. Performance stream. Alors, I'm the last frontier before the break, and I hope you all want to have this sharing moment together, so I will try to make it quick and fast. Alors, before I remind you that the performance stream was totally dead during COVID, I start as one with Pete helping. Thanks, Pete. We were asking where are we going with this stream, with this working team. And good news, now we have a team working. We enroll some new guys, which is Koki-san, Charles and Alex from the APAC group at this meeting, but also all the other members that worked with us in 2002 were very active, and I need to thank them for all their contribution. So Julia, Ralph, of course Pete and Teresa, and Rajan, Manesh and Takashi-san did a great job, and we will look at it together. We have a monthly meeting, which is important for us. It's short, it's quick, and it's helping us because we are a very, very international team. And when PM Paris time, because Paris is the center of the world, makes everybody available to link. It's unbelievable because you have Teresa on one side, which is at breakfast, and on the other side, you have Takashi-san, which is, I don't know where is Takashi-san. Can you raise your hand? Ah, okay, I find you. And Takashi-san, which is ready to go to bed. Okay, so we rolled out a 3 years organization. Our objective was we say what we do and we do what we say. And the result is quite obvious. 2022 target are almost all closed. We did the job. The survey went out. The 2021 survey went out. We discussed. We could liaise with the data. One disappointment we will see is on Oasis because it's not there, which is not a problem, and we're not going to put more burdens, so we put it on hold, and we will explain what is the strategy. And we also already started 2023 target with majorly 2 activities. One is the 2022 survey, which will come out in November, and also by starting to build up a small dashboard, simple, in order to build up and see if the people get this dashboard as a quality value activity. Okay, so next year we will of course make 2022 disappear, and you will find the 2023 to 2025 coming in. 3 things we want to do is member survey, industry analytics. That's the big change we did, because before it was called industry survey, but actually we want to speak analytics data. And thanks, Pete, for this real change. We want to go on soft, one side. We need your impression into the survey. And that's the big change you have to understand. We need to capture the feeling of people. We need to capture the data. And we need to give a dashboard at the end to make people take decision. And that's the change we are doing at this moment, thanks to the teamwork. Okay, so if I go to the member survey, so we are ready. You have still until the 26th of October to have your comment. It will be based on previous year questioning. More simple, direct, no more opening question. We got your point. And we want to have a little bit of history. There will be a third part that will open more to many people ask us, could you give us priority direction? So there is all kind of topics that we propose the organization to give a priority on, so to give direction. And once again, this is a soft survey. So it's ready, and we have to thank Julia and Ralph in the team for the job done. So November, you will have 1 month to answer, weekly reminder, and the sectors leaders will get to push their members to answer. So be ready, you are going to be awesome, okay? If I go now to the industry performance analytics. Alors, I present you many times this, and we're trying to gather Oasis V3, but no, we got it. Oasis V3 even version 1 will not answer the question. We need to get the version 2, which will get some data, so no problem. Let's wait for it. And Rajan, Manesh, and Takashi-san did a great job pushing, helping, preparing. Now we are ready. We understand the concept. We understand what we want. We know what we need to gather. But as Oasis is not there, we rather prefer to put it on hold because I don't want to lose them in terms of energy. And secondly, we need also to let Oasis come out and not bother the team because they have other key elements, okay? So let's go for Oasis V3. When it will be there, we will come back. But just for your info, everything is ready, and we have 3 members which are very engaged into it and ready to go ahead. And freeing their time allow us to go to the next one. Alors, The last many time I speak on here, I was saying IAQG cockpit. Basically, we do nothing since 2019. Nothing have happened. It was a little bit desperate. And we have newly restarted this activity with a clear vision on 3 things. At the end of the day, we want to give the EC a way to make decision, to take decision with data and with vision. Before we get to that point, we need to go up a little bit and say, hey, let's try to find out the famous 6-pack of indicators that are going at least to show us what are the life cycle of the IAQG. Why are we bringing value? We are a performance team, so before putting a KPI with an objective to reach and everything, let's first have a KPI which show the life cycle of the IAQG. So we worked on it. We call it the 6-pack, referring to the American habits to go on a trail with the 6 bottles of beer without being dry at any time. And we build a proposition that hopefully we will collect. So we made in purpose to collect it in different zones of the IAQG and in order to see what are the difficulties, what are the problems, why can't we resume this data easily? Because if it was easy, it would have been done since a long time. So we need to find the key elements. Alors, the cockpit, the KPIs is a 6-pack, and we went through a, sorry, an we went through an SQCDP system, went through ICOP, PSCI, and IAQG, discussed with all the members, and they said, okay, so we'll go for it. And I think I'm dying of my voice. So next time we will show you that. And this is the end. Break time.
Well, thanks to our speakers, we're running well ahead, but one thing that we did have a question that has come in online through the virtual monitoring, and Eric, this question is for you, and it's really, I think, a clarification in your presentation on the Americas sector. There was one of your third bullet points says common, and I'm going to read it as an acronym, GIDEP process being kicked off, and there was some misunderstanding. Is that an acronym? If it is, what does it mean? Is it a typo?
Yeah, so it is an acronym. It stands for the Government and Industry Data Exchange Program, and it is a cooperative process of sharing data and using it for a variety of purposes. There's different uses.
Okay,
I don't know if that answers that question, but.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks to our participants online. I know that you're following along, and when we get those questions, it helps us clarify that.